Why do the loudest voices often echo the deepest insecurities? Why is it that the ones who shout the most usually have the least to say? In a world addicted to noise, to validation, and to constant self-display, true power whispers. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause, and it never begs to be seen. Think about it. Every triumph posted, every opinion screened, every success broadcast like a commercial. Yet in all that noise, something quietly disappears. Strength. Because the moment you show too much, you give the world something to aim at. Not because power is dangerous, but because exposure is. This isn't just a theory whispered in philosophy classes. It's a truth burned into the bones of history, etched in the stories of fallen kings, betrayed leaders, and once invincible men who made one fatal mistake. They stepped into the spotlight. They wanted to be seen. So today, we turn to three unlikely allies: Machiavelli, the Stoics, and ancient war strategists, to uncover a forgotten art, the strength of staying hidden. If you've ever felt the pressure to prove yourself, to speak louder, to shine brighter just to be taken seriously, this video is for you. Stay with me. What you discover might just change how you move through the world. 1. Machiavelli's mastery of disguise. Machiavelli didn't worship brute strength. He wasn't seduced by power for its own sake. His genius lived in the subtle, often uncomfortable truth. Real power is quiet. It waits. It watches. It wears a mask when necessary, and disappears when it must. In The Prince, he didn't teach rulers to dazzle their enemies. He taught them to disappear from their eyes, to appear modest, even ordinary, because he understood something that has never changed: the brighter you shine, the easier you are to strike. Human nature recoils in the face of superiority. It doesn't bow to brilliance, it bristles. And when you parade your success, your talent, your intelligence, people don't admire you. They resent you. And resentment? It builds alliances faster than admiration ever could. Machiavelli was no fool. He studied perception like a warrior studies the blade. He understood that people rarely respond to truth, they respond to image. When you appear unthreatening, like just another face in the crowd, others drop their guard. They reveal their thoughts. They expose their weaknesses. And that, not applause, not attention, not recognition, is where real power begins. The wise don't act in the center of the stage. They move from the shadows, not to impress, but to control. Because to the wise, attention is a burden, not a reward. It invites scrutiny. It breeds jealousy. And in a world driven by ego, it invites betrayal. Machiavelli's admiration for Cesare Borgia wasn't rooted in Borgia's strength. It was in his strategy. Cesare moved like a scalpel through the politics of Italy, clean, quiet, and precise. He charmed when it served him, eliminated when it didn't, and above all, he concealed his true motives. But like many who rise too fast, Cesare made one critical error. He began to believe in the illusion of his invincibility. He exchanged subtlety for spectacle. He leaned on the shadow of his father's name. He flaunted his power, paraded his victories, and made the mistake of becoming the sun, blazing in the open, rather than the storm hiding behind the clouds. And when his foundation cracked, so did his empire. He was betrayed, captured, forgotten, not because he lacked strength, but because he forgot to remain unseen. Machiavelli's warning isn't just for kings. It's not just for rulers or generals. It's for anyone who seeks the quiet path to true influence. Because the Stoic, too, knows this truth, and that's exactly where we turn next. To the timeless wisdom of the Stoics, and why they never flaunted their virtue, no matter how much the world begged them to. Just as Machiavelli warned us about the dangers of being too visible, the Stoics carried that lesson into the very core of their philosophy, only in a quieter, deeper way. The Stoic does not flaunt his virtue. He lives it. He doesn't demand recognition. He demands discipline, from himself above all. As Epictetus taught, control over the mind is far greater than control over the world. And as Machiavelli showed, the ability to withhold is far more powerful than the urge to reveal. In both schools of thought, the message is the same. If you must strike, strike quietly. If you must lead, lead invisibly. Let your results speak for you, and let your silence give them weight. Because in a world drunk on noise, the one who remains still holds the greatest leverage, and the one who never shows off cannot be destroyed by what was never exposed. 2. Stoic restraint, the power of invisibility. Seneca, the trusted advisor to emperors and the calm voice of disciplined wisdom, never sought to dazzle the world. He had seen greatness rise and collapse, and with the clarity of a man who understood the price of standing too tall, he warned, to rise too high is to invite the storm. In a society addicted to applause, to noise, and to constant self-display, Seneca taught something almost radical, the strength of being unseen. To him, restraint was not weakness, it was the highest form of control. Stillness was not passivity, it was clarity in motion. And invisibility was not absence, it was the deepest kind of presence, the kind that does not beg for recognition because it has nothing left to prove. The truly powerful man, Seneca believed, moves through the crowd without needing the crowd. He doesn't chase recognition. He doesn't feed on the energy of others to validate his worth. He is whole, grounded, and deeply aware of how dangerous it is to let your value become public property. For nothing attracts envy faster than greatness displayed too soon, or too proudly. And envy, Seneca observed, is not just a flaw in others. It is a sharpened blade, capable of bringing down heroes, emperors, and entire empires. Shine too brightly, and you blind those around you. And in their blindness, they will strike, not because you have harmed them, but because your presence reminds them of what they are not. The Stoic ideal is not the conqueror who plants a flag over broken ground. It is the warrior who keeps his sword sheathed until it is absolutely necessary. It is the philosopher who only breaks the silence when silence itself demands it. It is the strategist who does not crave to be known, yet whose unseen hand still bends the course of events. True influence, whether in Stoic or Machiavellian thought, does not demand attention. It shapes outcomes quietly, without ever asking for applause. Think of the leader who walks into a room without fanfare. He says little, watches much, yet his presence alone commands the floor. Why is that? Because he has nothing to prove. His power does not lie in the volume of his voice, but in his restraint. His words carry weight not because they are loud, but because they are rarely spoken. The world may not notice when he arrives, but it will surely feel what he does. And that, as Seneca once said, is the highest form of power. Remember this. Power that shouts is already fragile. It seeks validation only because it doubts itself. In contrast, the power that knows how to hide, to wait, and to move in silence, that is the kind that cannot be destroyed. Because no one can touch it. The applause you chase today will turn into silence the day the crowd finds a new face to adore. but the actions you take when no one is watching, the strength you build in quiet, and the decisions you make unseen, those are the foundations that last. To walk the Stoic path is to let the world wonder, what is he capable of? And to never feel the need to answer. That is not just philosophy. That is strategy. That is freedom. Free. Flow like water. The strategy of the unseen. There is a form of wisdom often overlooked. Yet it reflects the very essence of both Stoic and Machiavellian thought. It is not loud. It is not flamboyant. It is the quiet force flowing beneath the surface, powerful enough to move the world without seeking recognition. This is the power of water, not because water crushes instantly, but because it never stops moving, never fights head-on, and never loses its shape. A wise strategist understands this. The one who boasts invites scrutiny. The one who shows their hand too soon invites resistance. But the one who adapts, who flows, who bends without breaking, remains out of reach. To chase admiration is to lose command. The more you try to impress, the more predictable you become. Once people can define you, they begin to plan against you. Once they know your strengths, they start searching for your weaknesses. At that point, your image becomes a target, and your success becomes ammunition for someone else's ambition. But if you hold back, act without explaining, and work without seeking applause, you will always remain out of reach. You are no longer an easy threat to counter. You become an enigma. And mystery is the strongest shield. Because power, at its core, is not what you possess, it is what others believe you might possess. It is not fixed, it is fluid, depending entirely on perception. When people do not know what you are capable of, they hesitate, they imagine possibilities, and they second-guess their assumptions. That hesitation is your advantage. A sword hidden beneath a cloak is far more dangerous than one on display. A leader whose intentions cannot be read holds greater influence than one who reveals every move. Invisibility is not weakness, it is strategy. It is the deliberate choice to remain undefined. So your enemies cannot prepare their defense. Think of the great tree that stands firm in a storm, refusing to bend, and then snaps. Now think of the reed that bows with the wind, absorbs the pressure, and rises tall again once the storm has passed. The Stoic understands that flexibility is not surrender, it is survival. Not because they avoid confrontation, but because they know how to choose the right moment to strike. This is not a retreat from strength. It is the art of controlling when and how that strength is revealed. When you move with the precision of a blade hidden in your sleeve. When your silence speaks louder than long speeches. And when your restraint hints at depths others can only imagine, you no longer need to prove anything. You begin to operate on a higher plane, one that is free from the need for validation. Let them guess. Let them wonder, while they chase after glittering illusions. You build substance while they are busy demanding to be seen. You collect results, and the less you show, the more you hold. This is the art of power through concealment. The rhythm of still dominance, to flow like water, present everywhere yet touched by nothing. That is how power survives, and more importantly, how it endures. 4. The danger of visibility. A lesson from history. Alcibiades was not merely talented, he was extraordinary. Born into privilege, taught by Socrates himself, gifted with a mind as sharp as the beauty that disarmed those around him. He could have reshaped history with subtlety and quiet precision, but instead of choosing that path, he chose the stage. He chose to dazzle. He craved admiration more than victory, attention more than legacy, and that choice sealed his fate. Alcibiades entered every room as though the world owed him applause. He flaunted his intellect, mocked those less gifted, and seduced the powerful not for love, but for dominance. He mistook desire for loyalty, and charm for safety, but even the most gifted cannot provoke envy without protection. And when the tide turned, he had nowhere left to hide. Banished from Athens, welcomed by Sparta and later by Persia, he played all sides like a gambler, convinced he was too clever to lose, yet power is not sustained by cleverness alone. It demands restraint, timing, and the humility to know when to speak and when to vanish. Alcibiades never learned that lesson. He believed that being unforgettable was the same as being untouchable. But both Stoic wisdom and Machiavellian law warn us. The spotlight is rarely a sanctuary. It is a trap the more you appear. The more you are examined, the more you are examined, the more you stir envy. And envy does not stay quiet. It plots, it recruits, and it waits for the moment when your confidence outgrows your caution. That moment came for Alcibiades when he found himself isolated, hunted, and finally executed far from the city that once adored him, not because he lacked greatness, but because he revealed it too often. True power does not demand to be seen, does not seek praise. It builds quietly, moves silently, and speaks only when there is something worth saying, as we've seen from the story of Alcibiades. The spotlight can be a double-edged sword. True power does not need to be displayed, and sometimes silence itself is the most enduring armor. The Stoic never mistakes applause for real value. They know that admiration can turn into resentment with just one twist of fate. The crowd is fickle, and those who cheer the loudest today may be the first to turn their backs tomorrow. Machiavelli would likely say that Alcibiades lost sight of the chessboard because he was too busy admiring himself in the mirror. A strategist who became a performer, and in doing so, he became predictable, vulnerable. His story is a mirror for us to ask ourselves, are we showing our strength? Or preserving it? Are we acting with purpose? Or performing for validation? Invisibility is not cowardice. It is discipline. It is wisdom. It is the path of those who understand that the most dangerous power is the kind that is never fully revealed. Alcibiades had everything, except for the one trait that keeps power alive. The ability to stop shining before the flame draws every predator near. Remember this. When you stop performing, you start commanding. And when you command without being seen, you become untouchable. Number 5. The Art of War. The Power of Strategic Silence. Sun Tzu called it a manual of subtlety, precision, and unseen movement. Its lessons do not glorify aggression. They teach restraint. And its most powerful command is deceptively simple. Never let them see you coming. This is not deception for deception's sake. It is strategy in its purest form. When you appear weak but are in fact strong, you do not betray your strength, you preserve it. Because the moment others sense your full capacity, they stop watching and start defending. If they fear your dominance, they will unite to break it. But if they believe you pose no threat, they will relax. They will reveal themselves, and that is when the wise strike, not in the open, not with spectacle, but with the calm sharpness of a hidden blade, drawn only when it's already too late. The greatest victories are not won through noise, but through misdirection, patience, and discipline. The best generals are not those who destroy armies, but those who dissolve conflict before it begins. And that can only be achieved when your intentions are hidden, your expression unreadable, and your presence unnoticed, until it is already too late to resist. This is what Machiavelli admired. not brute force, but invisible leverage, the power to move without leaving a trace. The influence that needs no announcement. Control is not about domination. It is about design. When you shape perception, you shape the outcome. As we've seen, true power doesn't come from putting yourself on display. It comes from controlling how others perceive you. Because when you shape perception, you shape the outcome. History's cautionary tales still echo this truth. Consider the fate of Uriah, a soldier whose steadfast virtue made him a threat. Not because he rebelled, but because he was too pure in a world built on compromise and calculation. A man who lives with honor is always dangerous, because his very presence forces others to confront what they have abandoned. And when those in power feel exposed, they rarely rise to meet virtue. They seek to eliminate the mirror that reflects their failure. Uriah was not punished for disobedience. He was destroyed because his mere existence revealed the weakness of those above him. Invisibility might have been his armor, but his loyalty, his consistency, and his refusal to play the political game made him too visible. And in the halls of corrupted power, visibility is not rewarded. It is removed. That same principle still applies today. Why do people show off? Because they crave recognition, admiration, validation, and that feeling is intoxicating. But it is also the beginning of the fall. The moment you shift your focus from the mission to the crowd's reaction, you lose your advantage. You start performing instead of preparing. You shape your actions for the audience, not for the goal. And while you're smiling for approval, somewhere in the quiet, someone is watching, positioning themselves to replace you, surpass you, or erase you. Ego convinces us that recognition is the reward. But the Stoic knows better. He does not fight for applause. He works in silence, knowing that every cheer creates an echo, and echoes draw eyes. Not all eyes admire. Some watch with envy, others with calculation. The more visible you become, the more predictable you are. And in the arena of influence, predictability is a fatal weakness. When your strength turns into a spectacle, it also becomes a map, and anyone can follow a map to find the cracks. Power that lasts is never loud. It is subtle, veiled. It moves like water beneath the surface, adapting, observing, outmaneuvering, and never revealing more than necessary. Both the Stoic and the strategist understand this. They do not rush to declare victory. They do not speak unless silence has lost its effect. They are not addicted to recognition. They are devoted to results. Showboating dulls your blade. Silence sharpens it, and in a world that confuses noise with power, the one who moves without sound is the one who decides how the game ends. Number 6. The Grayman strategy in the world of true power. The most dangerous person is the one you don't even notice. They hold no flashy title, seek no attention, perform for no crowd. They blend in, observe, prepare. Modern strategists know this well. Elite operatives, master tacticians, those who truly shape the outcome of battles and negotiations. They don't roar like lions. They move like shadows. They live by the art of the Grayman, present, but never a target. The wisdom lies in lowering your profile to increase your control. The Grayman is not lacking in strength. He possesses it fully, but refuses to waste it on display. His patience is not passivity, but discipline. He gathers intelligence while others announce their plans. He quietly observes the entire room while others rush to seize command. And when he acts, it is swift, decisive, and precise to the point of being devastating. That is not noise. That is absolute precision. It is the very essence of Stoicism in motion, moving without the burden of needing to be seen, influencing the course of events without becoming the headline. Power, in its most refined form, always operates in silence. Napoleon Bonaparte once embodied this kind of power. In his early campaigns, he did not seek glory. He moved with clarity and speed, letting victories speak louder than any grand proclamation. He understood that when you are silent, your intentions remain hidden, and when they are hidden, your enemies are forced to guess. That is when power multiplies. But as his empire grew, so did his pride. Napoleon could not resist becoming more than just a general. He crowned himself emperor, bypassing the humility of tradition, and turned himself into a symbol. From that moment, he became a target not only for armies but for history itself. His brilliance remained, but his restraint was gone. He fought to be remembered, and in doing so, invited destruction. Spain drained his strength, Russia shattered his forces, and Waterloo ended his reign, not because his mind had failed, but because his pride had outweighed his strategy. Nature tells the same story, not through war, but through survival. The most dazzling creatures often pay the highest price. A peacock's tail may enchant a mate, but it slows its escape. A brightly colored frog may signal poison, or simply die before proving it. Predators learn quickly, they adapt, and the flashy are always the first to be hunted. Darwin revealed this principle, not to glorify strength, but to recognize adaptation. Survival does not always belong to the strongest, but to the most aware, those who blend with their surroundings instead of fighting against them. In nature, to vanish is to win. Camouflage is not merely a tactic, it is a way of life. The Stoic and the strategist alike understand this. When you stop showing, you start controlling. When you no longer need attention, you begin shaping outcomes. Fireworks may light up the sky, but they vanish just as quickly. A ghost, however, the ghost remains. The ghost learns. The ghost endures. In a world where being seen often leads to being struck down, the one who chooses invisibility stands on the highest ground. Let others seek applause. Let them crave the spotlight. The Stoic and the Machiavellian both know true power lies in silence. In the person no one suspects until it is far too late. Never underestimate the quiet. The quiet one often carries the final word. And in a world where spectacle fades, the one who stays unseen is the one who survives. That is not just a tactic, it is the way to victory. That is not just a tactic. That is the pinnacle of control. That is power. And now, lesson number 7. In this era, exposure has become the new weakness. We live in a world where being seen is often mistaken for being valuable, where the crowd values noise over depth, the spotlight over wisdom. But the more you're pushed to show yourself, the greater the danger if you comply. Every post, every opinion, every glimpse of your strength becomes a trail of breadcrumbs leading others straight to your weaknesses. And in this new arena, the applause you receive today may simply be a mask hiding the envy that waits to strike tomorrow. The Stoics warned long ago, admiration is not always respect. Sometimes it is merely a quiet resentment, waiting to erupt. Machiavelli saw this too. He understood that the moment you allow yourself to be fully seen, you've already handed your enemies the data they need to defeat you, not through war, but through anticipating your every move. True power does not need the spotlight shining directly upon it. It operates from the shadows, observing while others perform, building quietly, And patiently waiting for the single perfect moment to act. Social media makes this lesson hard to remember. It constantly tempts you to prove yourself, to seek validation, to impress. But the price of that validation is predictability. And predictability is the beginning of your downfall. The more you allow others to define you, the easier it becomes for them to dismantle you. The Stoic stands still, not out of fear, but because he understands the chaotic nature of the world and refuses to feed it with his own image. You don't have to vanish completely to be strong, but you must stop turning yourself into a performance for the crowd. Let others speak, let them show off and fight for the spotlight. You quietly build your foundation, forging your resilience while they chase attention. In the end, it is not the loudest voice that endures, but the one no one saw coming. History has always punished those who shine too soon, and honored those who rise from silence. If you want lasting power, don't hand it to the crowd. Guard it, hide it, and let it grow where no one is watching. That is not weakness. That is strategy. Always remember, the more you reveal, the more you open the door for others to step in. Visibility invites judgment. Exposure invites attack. True power does not announce itself. It prepares in silence and moves with absolute precision. Let your presence remain subtle. Let your results speak without noise. And when the moment comes, do not hesitate. Act with clarity. Act without apology. That is not just strategy. That is self-mastery. If this message resonates with you, keep walking this path of quiet strength and timeless wisdom. And if it reminds you of a moment when staying unseen would have been the wiser choice, share it below with just a short phrase, 2 or 3 words. Your story matters more than you think. In the next video, we'll dive deeper into how invisibility can become your greatest weapon in a world that is always watching. Until then, stay quiet. Stay grounded, and let them underestimate you.